You know, when you think about getting a parrot, we often picture this companion for life, right? A feathered friend who might even be in the family for generations. But how much of that is just a nice idea, and how much of it is, well, reality? Today, we're going to dig in and separate the myths from the facts to get to the truth about how long parrots really live.
92. Just think about that for a second. 92 years. That is the actual recorded maximum lifespan for a parrot. It was a salmon-crested cockatoo in a zoo. I mean, that's an incredible number. And it's exactly this kind of thing that fuels the whole legend of the century-old parrot.
But let's be real. Does one record breaker really represent the average experience? Is bringing a parrot home a guarantee that you'll be putting it in your will? Well, as we're about to see, the real story is a whole lot more complicated. And honestly, it's a bit more sobering than the legends let on. So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll tackle that big 100-year myth head-on. Then, we'll look at what the actual data shows. We're going to uncover the single biggest thing that's shortening their lives. And then, don't worry, we'll lay out a clear plan for a long and healthy life. We'll also touch on caring for them in their golden years. And finally, what a lifelong commitment really means.
All right, let's dive right into that super popular belief, the idea that if you bring home a big parrot like a macaw or a gray, you're making a commitment that could seriously outlast you. It's something you hear all the time in the bird community, and it's taken very seriously.
Right, and this pretty much sums it up perfectly. Because they can live so long, the decision to get one is seen as this huge, decades-long commitment. And look, the sentiment here is absolutely spot on, but the premise it's all built on? That deserves a much, much closer look. Okay, so let's peel back all the stories and anecdotes for a minute and just look at the cold, hard data. Because when you stop looking at individual records and start looking at the bigger studies, a very different, and for a lot of people, a very surprising picture starts to emerge.
So take a look at this data from the Association of Avian Veterinarians. This is where it gets a little shocking. See that middle column? That's the median lifespan. That means half of all pet birds of that species live less than this age. A little Budgie at 5.5 years, an African gray at just 9, even a big blue and gold macaw at 21 years old. Now compare that to the longevity records on the right. It's not just a gap, it's a canyon.
And this brings us to the big question, right? If these birds have the genes to live for all these decades, why are so many of them living for just a fraction of that time in our homes? What is going on? Well, the answer, it turns out, really comes down to one critical thing.
And here it is, the number one culprit. The main reason for these shortened lifespans is poor nutrition. Specifically, it's our long-standing reliance on feeding them diets based almost entirely on seeds.
You see, here's the thing about parrots. They're incredibly picky eaters. They're not like your dog who's just going to eat a balanced bowl of kibble. Nope, they're foragers. If you give them a mix of stuff, they don't eat what's good for them. They pick out their favorite things. And wouldn't you know it, their favorite things are usually the worst things for them. This study from Texas A&M it's the perfect example. When they gave Amazon parrots a choice, they ate almost every single one of the high-fat sunflower seeds, 98%. The balanced, healthy pellets, they ate about a third of those. And the good-for-you carrots, a measly 5%. They're basically like toddlers at a buffet. You know, they just pick out all the candy and leave the broccoli behind. So what's the big deal? Well, this means their diet is dangerously out of whack. It's way too high in fat, which leads to obesity and terrible liver disease. And, at the same time, it's super low in key nutrients like calcium, which they need for strong bones. This isn't just a minor problem. It is a direct recipe for chronic, life-shortening diseases. But, and this is a big but, here's the good news. This is almost completely preventable. The power to close that huge gap between their potential and their reality, it lies almost entirely with you, the owner. So let's look at the blueprint for a long, healthy life. It really comes down to these 5 key things. First, a balanced diet that's based on formulated pellets, not seeds. Second, adding in fresh veggies and fruits. Third, making sure they get out of the cage every day for exercise. Fourth, keeping their brilliant minds busy with toys and puzzles. And fifth, and this is so important, getting annual checkups with a vet who specializes in birds.
So, this is what you're aiming for. Pellets should be the foundation, like 60 to 75% of everything they eat. Then you fill in the rest with fresh vegetables and a little bit of fruit. Seeds? They're not totally forbidden, but you gotta treat them like candy. A tiny, occasional treat, not the main course.
And look, it's not just about what goes in their food bowl. These birds are wicked smart.
Enrichment, like puzzle toys or activities where they have to work to find their food, that isn't just playtime. It's a basic need. It keeps their minds sharp, it prevents stress behaviors like feather plucking, and it gets them moving. Now, if you do all of this right, you get the amazing privilege of caring for a senior parrot. And just like with people, their needs start to change as they get into their golden years.
And what's really wild is what old even means for a parrot. It's totally different depending on the species. A little Budgie is considered a senior citizen after just 6 years, a Cockatiel after 12. But for a big Macaw, we're talking over 30 years old. It just shows you how incredibly diverse they are.
Senior birds can start to get a lot of the same problems we do, things like arthritis, cataracts, even heart conditions. And that's exactly why those yearly vet visits become more important than ever. A good avian vet can spot these things early and help you make little changes to their cage or their diet to keep them comfortable and happy for as long as possible.
Okay, so let's bring this all back around. What does it actually mean to make a lifelong commitment to a parrot?
It really all boils down to one simple, powerful fact. While their genetics might set the potential for a long life, the single biggest factor that determines how long your parrot will actually live is you. The choices you make every single day about their food, their home, and their care, that is what defines their future.
And that right there is the big takeaway. The myth is passive, right? It's just about being prepared for them to get old. But the reality? Oh, the reality is active. It's about providing the constant, detailed, day in and day out care that gives them a chance to reach that incredible old age. A long life isn't just something that happens, it's something that's earned through amazing care.
So that leaves us with one last really important question. It's not just about whether you're prepared for them to live a long time. It's about whether you're prepared to do the work every single day that makes a long, healthy life possible. Are you prepared for that lifetime of care?